Josh used to be such a good kid. Good grades, lots of friends, just a genuinely good person. I am a high school English teacher, primarily for sophomores and juniors. I had heard from a couple other teachers that he always got high A's in all his classes, so I was excited to hear that I would have him at the start of the school year. On the first day of school, he walked in 5 minutes late to class looking sleep-deprived. This caught me off guard, but I brushed it off as him not being used to waking up early. I introduced myself to the class and got them started on an assignment. I noticed that Josh hadn't said a word yet, which was not common for him according to what I heard from other teachers. I sat down at my desk, ready to begin creating the test that they would be taking next week. I instantly got very uncomfortable but couldn't determine why. Something just felt off. I scanned the room and locked eyes with Josh. He had looked exhausted when he walked into class, but now looked wide awake. Not wanting to make a big deal out of it, I tried my best to forget about it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being stared at, even though he was probably doing his work quietly by then. Eventually the urge to look became too much for me. My eyes left the computer screen and he was still sitting there, looking at me. His eyes were open even wider than before, and I thought I saw a hint of fear in his eyes. Now very uncomfortable, I excused myself to the bathroom. When I got back to the classroom, I stared at the floor as I walked back to my desk. I didn't have to look up to know that Josh's eyes probably followed me across the room. I looked up again, and his eyes were bulging. It looked like they were on the brink of popping out of his sockets. I searched the room for anyone who might have noticed, but everyone was just focusing on their work. I found it unnatural that the entire class was working so quietly on the first day, but I had something more important to worry about. I looked back at Josh, and he continued to stare right back at me. I checked the time and was relieved to find that there were only 15 minutes left in the period. Still not a single person in the room had noticed anything. I looked back to my computer, determined to ignore him for the rest of class, then talk to him after everyone else had left. A few minutes later, a sense of relief washed over me. I looked up and saw that Josh was finally looking away from me. However, it was still just as unsettling to see him staring at a blank wall. I had not decorated my classroom yet, so there was nothing he could be reading. That was when the screams started. They erupted from everywhere in the classroom, except nobody in the room was screaming. Everyone was just sitting there, doing their work silently. The sound was deafening, but didn't seem like it was coming from anybody in the room. Then, just as suddenly as they started, the screams stopped. Josh was staring at me again, and the rest of the class continued doing their work. Then, after looking away for a second, the entire class was gone. They just vanished. The only two people in the room were me and Josh, who was still staring at me with fear in his eyes. I don't know why, but I could tell that he was scared. I checked the time, and second period was about to begin. I locked the door so no more students could get inside the classroom. Josh is still staring at me. I have felt a breath on my neck while typing these last few paragraphs. I noticed that Josh's gaze has shifted. He looks even more scared than before, and he's not looking straight at me anymore. He's looking directly behind me.